Friends, tired of working 9 to 5 for a world that hates and fears you? Then why not spend your next vacation on Utopia? Dine, shop, and be entertained by the world's largest population of mutants. Enjoy our daily sentinel attacks. This island paradise is located just outside San Francisco. But don't worry, you can drive there, thanks to our daily rerouting of the Golden Gate Bridge. Utopia.
Do you want to make more money? Sure, we all do. So why not send away to the Jean Grey School of Higher Learning for one of our mail-order courses in the following: Combating Intolerance, Telepathy and Psychic Projection, Defying the Laws of Nature, Combating Evil Mutants, Teaming Up with the Avengers, What Not to Say, Identifying and Treating Brood Infestations, Accounting, Renaissance Art History, and much, much more.
Going to school or hanging out in San Francisco with a bunch of jobless drifters. The competition is old as time itself. On today's episode, we're going to review the two brand new #1 issues that relaunch Marvel's mutant franchise with Uncanny X-Men #1 and Wolverine and the X-Men #1. Enjoy the show. Hi everyone, welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek. In a market overwhelmed by #1 issues, we've got two more coming at you. After the recent miniseries Schism, Wolverine and Cyclops have taken the mutant race in two separate directions. Team Cyclops espouses a survival-at-all-cost attitude aboard their island of Utopia on the West Coast, whereas Team Wolverine has reestablished the school in Westchester, New York, to teach children how to control their powers in an environment where they won't have to be soldiers. Again, Cyclops is saying let's get them before they get us, and Wolverine is saying let's give peace a chance. Here's the first issue recap for Wolverine and the X-Men, and no, it has nothing to do with the cartoon series that was on a few years ago. The book opens the day before inspectors are due to arrive and look things over. Wolverine is showing Professor X around the grounds of the new Jean Grey School of Higher Learning. Xavier declines to come on board with the staff, believing the torch has passed to Logan, but bestows his blessings on the Beast-designed campus and promises Wolverine that the challenges he'll face as headmaster are like none he can anticipate. Wolverine's a headmaster? You mean his skull transforms into a robot? Oh, that makes sense because he's got all that metal up there. The next morning, Logan meets his headmistress, Kitty Pryde, to greet the inspectors from the New York State Department of Education, Mrs. Marigold and Mr. Cludd. Cludd? That sounds like one of those old Jack Kirby monsters the Fantastic Four would fight. Beware the might of the unstoppable Cludd. I'll shut up now. The inspectors are rude and quite blunt with their mutant bigotry, even though the campus is an impressive sight. Unappreciative of the fine arts of psychic defense class, and taken aback by Husk's lack of tact handling rowdy students, things go from bad to worse. Janitor Toad complains that he still doesn't have a bed, and his room is filling up with hot lava. Glob, Herman, and Hellion pick on the newest member of the school, Brew, who is, of all things, a mutant member of the alien race, the Brood. Logan decides to teach the boys a lesson and activates one of Hank McCoy's most radical redesigns of the school. Apparently, any room in the school can now be turned into a danger room. Logan lets the fire-breathing toilets teach the students a lesson. The inspectors then meet Edie, late of Generation Hope, and she presses on them that mutants are all monsters, as she is still a bit shell-shocked from killing human supremacists in Schism. All of these interactions further cloud the moods of Cludd and Marigold, but at least one potential problem is under wraps. Quentin Quire, former rioter, is kept under close guard by Kitty's pet dragon, Lockheed. Hoping a visit with everyone's favorite big blue cat-like teddy bear will charm the inspectors, Kitty and Logan take them down to the Beast's workshop, only to find him immersed in keeping the school held together and suffering coffee withdrawal. Hank mentions something about the school being infested with interdimensional gremlins before going to collect the latest load of alien Shi'ar technology, including Kid Gladiator, the son of the Shi'ar Empire's leader, and his bodyguard, Warbird. Iceman interrupts to tell Logan that he has a visitor. At the gates, Logan meets Cade Kilgore, boy genius and weapon manufacturer CEO.
Cade informs Logan that he is the new Black King of the Hellfire Club and was responsible for the suitcase sentinel that nearly destroyed Utopia. Logan pops out the old pig stickers and tells Cade to shove off, but Cade counters that he didn't foresee this. A school teaching mutants and humans to live in peace is bad for the Sentinel business, and he quietly vows to destroy it. As Logan drives back to the main campus, the aforementioned gremlins burst out of the school, chasing the inspectors.
If there's one thing I don't see enough of in comic books, and there's only one thing I don't see enough of in comic books, it's a pack of 1/8 to scale naked nightcrawlers harassing a pair of snooty white folk. Bravo, Jason Aaron. Bravo.
Just as Wolverine is about to lose his cool, the entire school starts to shake. With a "Ha! Told ya!" from Kildare, the entire campus is assaulted by a giant monster.
I know one thing, that monster ain't called Clud. Okay, I'll admit that ever since the move to San Francisco, I've been hoping that sooner rather than later we'd get back to the school environment. But is this more traditional take on the X-Men a dream come true, or a nightmare brought on by some indigestion? An undigested bit of beef, perhaps? A blot of mustard? Let's take a look at what did and didn't work on Wolverine and the X-Men #1.
I will say that Wolverine and the X-Men has a lot of good things in its favor. The story is a lot of fun, as the idea of Wolverine and Kitty having to show state inspectors around their crazy new school is a concept too good to pass up. Whenever something goes wrong, we can feel Wolvie lose a little bit more of his cool, and Kitty's calm veneer crack that much more. Also, the story benefits from having Charles Xavier there to give it his blessing. Professor X seemed to be the one character missing from Schism. If anyone's opinion on Logan and Scott's dispute mattered more than most, it'd be Professor X. Yet aside from an appearance in the Prelude to Schism miniseries, we never saw or heard from him. Even though it seems like he's staying on Utopia, his appearance here gives the book the right sort of legacy feel for the X-Men franchise. However, where the book fails is that it hits us with so much information at once, we never really get a chance to decompress and let it sink in. It's only the first issue, but it feels as though we're 6 issues in and we've missed something. The best example being the alien students at the school. Where did Wolverine find a mutant brood? When did Gladiator have a son? It seems like the alien students should have been introduced in a later arc so we'd have time to appreciate what Wolverine's done with the school, and these new unique characters could have a longer, more proper introduction. It's a case of too much too soon. Speaking of which, Bamfs. The school gets infested by gremlins that just happen to look like Wolverine's dead best friend, and they call them Bamfs? Not only that, but in the school pamphlet at the back of the comic, Wolverine is hunting them down, so he's also killing the miniature versions of his dead best friend.
Even to a guy like me, that's cold.
Also, while I thought the Hellfire Club was the best thing about Schism, here Cade comes off as a little too ridiculous. Another reviewer pointed out that Cade Kildare is essentially Sue Sylvester from Glee. He shows up to give a long speech about how he's so great and they're so terrible, and how the Hellfire Club will take them down. It's a little too pompous and ballsy to be believable. Also in Schism, the Hellfire kids looked like they were 8 or 9. Here Bachalo draws Cade, who looks easily 15 or so. Otherwise, I do think the art is good, as I've always liked Chris Bachalo. He has a wonderfully stylized way of drawing men and women and even superpowers. I did feel like it suffered from a few too many extreme close-ups. Wouldn't it have benefited us to see just what Paige had transformed into, so we'd know exactly why it freaked out the inspectors? Also, in that last page, the final menace is very vague. Is that a giant monster a la Godzilla? If so, why are there a pair of hands sprouting out of its mouth, and where are its eyes? I couldn't really tell what was going on at that last moment. As mentioned before, there's a pamphlet for the school in the back. It's very helpful in that it tells us which mutants are at Gray's school. The class listings are good for a quick chuckle, but not much else.
Okay, I didn't intensely like or dislike this first issue. Frankly, I was very overwhelmed by everything that was happening. I'll give you my rating at the end of the show, but suffice to say, whatever problems I had with this book, I feel like it's got a ton of potential, and once it gets settled, it should be a real fun read. Now, with Wolverine and company reviving the school for gifted youngsters, what happens to Utopia? Still under the leadership of Scott Summers and underwear fetishist Emma Frost, Utopia continues forward as a sanctuary for the beleaguered mutants across the globe.
We open with a full-page spread of Dramatis Presenti, before going into a tour of San Francisco with special focus on Utopia and the city's other claim to fame. Its other famous resident being the Dreaming Celestial. Celestials are a race of intergalactic bioengineers. They're responsible for the creation of the Eternals and Deviants on Earth. This one Celestial has stood immobile in San Francisco for some time.
The story follows on the resurrection of Mr. Sinister at the end of the previous volume of Uncanny X-Men. He kills 2 tourists in front of the Celestial before simply banging on its leg with his cane and strolling right in. We then cut to Scott Summers, leader of the Utopian X-Men, getting a pep talk from his girlfriend, Emma Frost. Resolute, he strolls in and announces that the assembled mutants and android are now his extinction team.
You know, that's not a great name for a superhero team. Oh my god, all around us, chaos and death! Someone save us!
Have no fear, the extinction team is here.
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna go take my chances with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse over there. Ciao. But...
The team includes Magneto, yes, that Magneto, Namor the Submariner, yes, that Namor the Submariner, Danger, the former Danger Room artificial intelligence turned android killing machine, Hope, the mutant messiah, Storm, whose marriage to the Black Panther still managed to outlast Kim Kardashian's marriage to Chris Humphries, Magic, teleporter and emotional cripple after a lifetime of torment spent in hell, where she learned to cast spells and had her soul remade into a sword that only she can wield, and her older brother Colossus, who's become the new Juggernaut empowered by the demon Cytorok. Scott makes an unfortunate comparison of Utopia to North Korea and Iraq, attempting to point out just how powerful and feared the mutants of Utopia are. The extinction team will act as a deterrent to those who would harm the mutants. Storm, in her new role as Scott's Jiminy Cricket, points out that many of the team have a checkered past with villainy, and Scott counters that they must rely on each other to make sure the team doesn't cross any moral boundaries. Time passes and business as usual continues on Utopia until they're contacted by Abigail Brand, leader of SWORD, Earth's extraterrestrial defense agency. They've detected a massive spike in the energy output of the dreaming Celestial. Scott decides this is the perfect time to debut the Extinction Team. In contact with their scientific advisors, the X Club, they begin to analyze the alien when its head takes off and transforms into a bust of Mr. Sinister.
Does anyone else have any Unicron flashback?
Sinister taunts the X-Men that they should thank him for playing villain to their public attempt at heroism. The head blasts lasers at them while Emma calls in Namor. The King of Atlantis proceeds to spike the head into the ground. Before the team can take advantage of Namor's attack, the Celestial's body begins to break apart into hundreds, if not thousands, of Matrix-esque probes. The Juggerossus, or is that Colossernaut, gets blasted by one of these probes. Emma thinks her diamond form will protect her, only to find she's lost an arm. Magneto and Storm combine their powers to begin destroying the probes. Peter decides to jug her up and the Juggernaut helmet magically appears. Magic creates a torpedo teleport and Colossus shoots out of it to destroy another probe. Dr. Nemesis speaks some technobabble that would put Star Trek to shame, and this somehow gives Magneto the idea to use his magnetic powers on the metal probes. Faster than you can say bionicle, Magneto's rebuilt the body and is keeping it from disassembling. Remembered that this started with Sinister's floating head, Danger tracks it to the mainland of California, where it releases a vast amount of energy. Suddenly, everyone is transformed into Sinister.
But now, there is no human race. There is only the Master Race.
So that's the brand new Uncanny X-Men #1. The first brand new Uncanny X-Men #1 in nearly 50 years. Let's compare the good and the bad.
Well, this book has a much more straightforward adventure story. We get a brief setup, exposition for the forming of Scott's new team, and then we jump right into the action. For a first issue, there's precious little in the way of explanation. It really assumes you've been reading the previous volume of Uncanny X-Men up until that point. There's no explanation of why the mutants are on Utopia, why Namor and the Atlanteans are living beneath the island, why Colossus is now the Juggernaut. Since the first issue is always trying to attract new readers, you'd think they'd explain things a little bit better. Also, some characters don't get much in the way of characterization during this story. Scott's nervous, Emma's confident, Magic is protective of her older brother, and Storm is worried about the makeup of the new team. The other characters never get much of a chance to shine and speak through their actions. Also, this book more or less ignores the death of Mr. Sinister back in Messiah Complex, although that might be referenced in later issues. However, since that event, we've had the living clone of Miss Sinister around, but again, she's not mentioned. Sinister is back, and we're just supposed to ignore what's happened since he's been gone. Reboots like that always kind of annoy me, but given that Sinister was a schemer, I guess it's okay to infer that he had multiple resurrection plans in place and came back via one of those. I do normally like Carlos Pacheco's artwork. I did have a few minor quibbles, such as Emma's enormous buttocks in one scene, but overall, the art in this issue didn't really grab me as usual with Pacheco, and I have to put that on the book's coloring by Frank Darmada. There's never any colors that pop out at you, even with the energy effects. Compare this to Pacheco's work on the JLA-JSA crossover book, Virtue and Vice. Here, the bright colors really sell the art and help it to come alive.
So what do I think of these two books compared to one another? Well, neither title is the out-of-the-park home run you'd want for the first issue of your new franchise title. Of the two, I'd say that Wolverine has better art and more interesting characters, while Uncanny X-Men has the more coherent story. I give Wolverine and the X-Men #1, 3.5 out of 5 stars. Wolverine feels like a nice return to the more traditional take on the X-Men, but keeps it fresh with a new take on the school and the student body. This book has a lot of potential. As for Uncanny X-Men #1, I give that one 2.5 out of 5 stars. This is the natural continuation of every X book we've been reading for the last 3 years, and a more traditional action story. That's all for now. I'm the Last Angry Geek, and I'll see you back here next time on Comic Book Issues.